Go.
Alrighty. This is Ornery Young Guns Quick Draw. We're right online. I have OIG with me here. Okay.
It was a long one. It was a bit of a mouthful.
That's what she said.
Alrighty. Okay. Great start, guys. He gives all the Native American diseases, but it's AIDS, so we don't really care. We got John over here. He is our Black anchor baby. I'm the Russian transplant, and then we have the very special guest, Mr. X. He's the undocumented that we want to keep.
There we go. We got them all.
Got it all. All
Whether
right.
you want us or not.
So if you guys could catch our theme, we are talking immigration, and we have joined with us our sort of he's definitely an expert on immigration. Immigrants come to America through his work, so we're going to talk to him a little bit. One of the first things that I wanted to sort of get in with him and talk about was his experience, because he used to be a Border Patrol agent. So I just wanted to talk to him a little bit and talk to him about that in terms of asking him about, I guess, what it's like to be a Border Patrol agent and what he sort of saw.
All right.
I guess
first, my boring official lawyer statement. Nothing said during this podcast constitutes legal advice. I'm not your lawyer. I'm definitely not establishing an attorney-client relationship. If you think you need a lawyer, contact a lawyer licensed by your state. Now that we have the boring disclaimer out of the way, Border Patrol. Border Patrol was nuts when I was there. I was in a pretty remote desert station. So as soon as you graduated and got off the field training unit, they threw you a shotgun and a truck and said, go forth and catch. And that was the extent of your instructions.
Wow.
And, I had nights where I would go out, make an arrest, bring them back to the station, go back out, make a second arrest, bring them back to the station, go back out a third time, make a third arrest, and bring them back to the station too. And we were a you catch it, you clean it station, so I had to do all the paperwork on him when I brought him back.
So were you like kind of alone out there? Was there a group? Was there like how many of you were out there?
Once you got off field training, you were by yourself. Depending on where you were, you could have backup about 10 minutes away. If you went deep into the desert, you could be 45 minutes from the next person.
Holy crap.
Wow.
I mean, I'm assuming there was like large groups at a time, isn't there? I mean, I think that's sort of the narrative, that there's like large groups of people coming over all at once.
Typical group size would be about 8 to 20. And a lot of times they don't know where they are, they don't know where they're going, so the guide's going to run off and everybody else is going to give up and come in with you. Because their guide's gone, they got nowhere else to go. Sometimes you get a bunch of younger guys and they'd realize you were by yourself and they kind of look at each other like they were going to get squirrely.
Oh, God, I can only imagine.
Just remind them, like, hey, the shotgun has 5 rounds. Let's all be gentlemen here. Who wants to be the 5 that are definitely going to die? And everybody calmed right down.
I would imagine you got to take that stance, I guess. And
it's like, I got 5 rounds in my shotgun. We'll do this like gentlemen. Who wants to be the 5 that die?
And one thing I wanted to, just because I heard it recently, because I had argued that one of the problems with the entire illegal immigration debate is that there are people I know who are on the conservative side, definitely for secure borders, but that's just it, is that we say, look, we might be in the market to listen to what we should do about people who are already here, provided we secure the border. Now, from people like, if you remember Ed, where he would say, well, the border's already secure. Like the idea that the border's porous is kind of a myth. Is just based on what you've seen, would you say that's true?
When I was there, we estimated among ourselves that we were catching maybe 30% of the people crossing.
Okay.
Yeah, we had it nowhere near under control. We were receiving directives from management to patrol certain areas and not patrol certain areas.
Really?
And that was so that we would not notice all the signs of people crossing without us catching them, because people that got past us made us look bad. So if they just didn't look there, we didn't see any signs of them, so they must not have crossed.
So it's bureaucratic politics at its finest.
Gotcha.
What kind of rules of engagement did you guys have?
The ones that we followed or the ones that they had? I have heard that things have gotten a lot more bureaucratic since I left.
Okay.
When I was there, it was you could go hands-on with people about once a week if you were doing your job well. During the high seasons, during the spring and the fall, you're going to have situations where you had to tackle people and zip cuff them about once a week.
Huh. Because the reason I ask is because and if for those of you that are watching, if you go to our description below, there's a link to our Facebook page. There's an immigration reform plan that I mapped out. It's obviously, there's always room for improvement. So if you want to comment on it, feel free. But the first point is securing the border. And one of the ideas that I had for securing the border, and it kind of ties to what you're talking about, is not just have a border patrol, but why not have the military participate in live capture drills where they actually have real targets that they've got to live capture, but with rules of engagement where if your life is in danger as a soldier or they fire on you, obviously you defend yourself and you fire back. Is that something that would help the border patrol? Is that something would that just get in your way, or like what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, realistically, you would have to put military through a whole lot of training, and it would actually, I think, take away from military training to train them up as law enforcement.
Okay.
Maybe some of the military who are law enforcement, the MPs and the corrections guys who are more familiar with law enforcement rules of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, because my thought process is this, especially when you're talking about like cartels and sex traffickers and that sort of thing, like these people that are crossing the border. And I know that not everyone that crosses the border is a sex trafficker or a drug mule or a coyote or what have you.
Right. But until you catch them, you don't know which ones are.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And these are people that I think it's a fair comparison to think of these people as invaders. These are people that are incurring. It's an incursion across our border into our country. That's a violation of our sovereignty. If they did that with guns and tanks, we would summon the military. And so, I guess, why don't we look at it more like from a military standpoint, as saying, okay, look, we have the Border Patrol people. They're the experts on law enforcement. They partner with the military to kind of make sure the military knows, they doesn't overstep their bounds or doesn't make it, they don't treat it totally like warfare. Yeah. But the military all the time, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not from your experience in the Marines, but the military all the time, they're given high value targets that they have to capture alive and bring back for interrogation or for intel. So why couldn't we do something like that and just treat illegal immigrants as high value targets, which the military already knows how to capture?
Well, we would have to change the law to be able to do that.
Okay.
I mean, right now the military doesn't have any arrest authority to arrest you inside the United States.
Okay.
It could be done easily enough. If you're going to change this policy, you probably need a change in federal law anyway. You just bake that into the federal law change.
Okay, so no constitutional issues there then, as far as the military arresting people within the United States.
I'm sure there's ways around any issues.
Okay.
Of course there are. Of course there are.
That's kind of the problem sometimes too with what's going on in government right now, is they find all kinds of ways to get around those issues.
Well, I mean, for the LA riots and back in '92, we deployed the military for those to back up the civilian police. So it's not without precedent for the military to back up civilian law enforcement, but you would need to go about it in the right way. And I haven't done the research to know exactly what that right way would be.
Okay. That's fair.
And this is the one area where I'd say that, like I said, this is like the one issue where conservatives in particular are very pro-federal government, because this is for once one of its legitimate functions. And I find it somewhat ironic that it's the one issue where you get so much blowback, because it's like, for a bunch of areas where the federal government shouldn't be involved, we're told, oh no, they have to be involved. The one area here where it's actually legitimate, and it's like, no, we don't want them involved in this, because there are several states along the border, so it actually would be simpler for this to be done from the federal level. So I keep, and also I'm jumping track because I'm thinking of 3 different things at once, but of the people that you found or caught, was there any real attempt to identify, like, who were they? I mean, like, did you know anything about the process to figure out? Because I'm curious to know how many of them were, just looking for the better life, and how many of them were like tied to drug cartels or something, that kind of thing.
Well, everybody we caught got the all 10 fingerprints rolled.
Mm-hmm.
They had, we looked them over for identifying marks, tattoos, scars, that sort of thing.
Mm.
We ran them against the FBI database. So a couple of times you get somebody and he's playing, oh, I'm just here to pick crops, and you go and run the 10 print on them, and oh, really? Because this says you're wanted in El Salvador. You're a big player at MS-13.
Right. Right. And that's the reason I wanted to know about that also, again, is because I really am curious to know, because lately the people that I've talked to on this issue, they still seem to have this idea that we don't need to worry about border security. It's not a big issue because it's already like totally secure, and it's just a bunch of xenophobes that just hate Mexicans, yada, yada, yada. And that's why I was curious. No, just how secure is it? I mean, what, so like you said, apparently a lot of people are just getting by because they don't want to be embarrassed.
A lot of people, when I was there, a lot of people were getting by. I've heard more optimistic rates at this point. They're saying we might be getting 70 to 75% of them now.
What changed?
Is that 70 to 75% of the immigrants that we notice are crossing, or is that 70 to 75% of the ones that are actually like the total amount?
They're of the total amount, and I think this administration is more devoted to getting an accurate count.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they put up a wall, they're going to want to be able to justify that wall with see how many people it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm not a big believer, at least not in a physical wall. I'd be okay with like a fence in areas that are difficult for Border Patrol agents to reach, a combination of satellite surveillance, helicopters, Border Patrols, that sort of thing. Actually, personally, I would just say fucking annex everything south of the border until we hit the Panama Canal. That's just me.
The biggest mistake we made is we had Marines in Mexico City and we didn't just keep it.
Yeah, right. I know,
right? We just should have just kept it. And honestly, what's easier to
beaches,
patrol?
there's oil.
That long stretch of border, or just like this little tiny canal? Like, I think that's much easier to defend. So
it's funny. It's funny because I was going to say, for such an imperialist country as America is supposed to be, we're awfully bad at it. I mean, geez.
we
We're
bought
the worst empire of all
the
time.
land.
We're like, hey, we conquered this country. Here, you can have it back. Damn, there's some
The Romans are ashamed of us.
I know, right? Somewhere Caesar is spinning in his grave.
Okay. Right. So just to sort of get back in before we move on from this, because it's really very interesting, I did want to ask you specifically about, I've read a lot that there's a lot of child trafficking, and DACA sort of helped make child trafficking easier. Do you have any like experiences that would sort of, I guess, that would like, I mean, any stories that would sort of support that or not support it?
I don't have anything. I left the Border Patrol long before DACA became reality.
Right.
But
Right.
I know ICE has arrested almost 1,000 people now for child trafficking, for either transporting the children themselves or for paying a cartel to do it. And it seems like this Justice Department is serious about prosecuting people that pay a cartel to bring children across the border. I have trouble believing that, given that DACA was for kids who were brought into the country against their will, I have trouble believing that that wouldn't apply to at least some children who were trafficked by cartels.
Well, I know, so I live out in Colorado. I know that Denver kind of has a reputation because it's an international hub or for airlines, and then it's a national hub for highways. The rumor is we have a problem with in Denver with sex trafficking. That's like a major issue. So I wouldn't be surprised too if that's the case.
And a lot of times it's you may have parents who put their kids in the hands of smugglers, not intending for them to be sex trafficked, but that's who they're giving them to, is sex traffickers. And once they have your kid, it's you'll do what we say because we have your kid. So,
well,
you know,
and that was another thing, was like the kidnappings and the, I know Glenn Beck did like a big expose years ago. I mean, there was like the photos of like cartels leaving like severed heads on like a dance club floor. There was also, because one of the things pointed out years ago was that, people acted as though, well, all these measures were taken to secure the border just because, again, xenophobia, we hate brown people. Yet most of the people, and I'm sure you probably were near some of these places, are largely Latino, if I'm not mistaken, aren't they?
A good number of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that's just it, is that most of the people who are being protected are Hispanic themselves. They usually tend to live in a lot of these border towns that are hit by all this cartel activity, and a secure border would protect them. But supposedly it's all racism. But that's what I was wondering if because I actually know somebody who was a border patrol agent too. Couldn't really get him on here. We don't talk much these days, but he was also did border patrol, and he kind of said the same. He used to talk about how, like, most of the people you're protecting are actually not white themselves. They're mostly Latino, and it's just like it gets difficult to do this when the politics of it all. We have to waste our time arguing who's racist and who's not, when this has literally nothing to do with race.
And if you look at it that way, isn't it really racist to assume that all Hispanics like illegal immigration?
Right? That's like
all the people that bothered to spend all the money and all the time to come here the right way would enjoy having other people, because they look like them or speak the same language, break the law and come here illegally.
Yeah, my wife. My wife's Chilean. She's a naturalized citizen now.
So she hates Mexicans.
But Peruvians more. But I mean,
but who doesn't hate Peruvians, really?
They are like the Mexico of South America, so that's the problem. But yeah, she hates that. We see that all the time. Is the assumption that, oh, because you're brown and you're Mexican, or one, you don't speak English, or you came here illegally, or you came here to get a green card. And it's funny because most of these assumptions actually come from leftists.
Right.
Yes.
We were in Boulder a few years back. She was pregnant with our first kid, and she was craving something from this restaurant, so she asked me to go pick it up for her. I called it in, and she wanted to walk in and go get it. So she ran in and she got it. And this is Boulder. This is a liberal enclave. Okay. These are white. These are lily white trust fund hippie liberals that live in overpriced housing. So she bumps into this couple, and as far as she could tell, they weren't drunk, but you'd almost have to wonder if they were drunk to say what they said next. So she bumps into this guy, and the lady next to her's like, "Oh, honey, don't touch her. She's brown." My wife just looked at her and she goes, "Honey, it's not contagious. Fuck off." So,
oh boy.
I mean, it's almost always, in my experience, it's almost always the liberals that are the most obnoxiously racist, and that they want to go on about the Klan this and the alt-right that and Nazis this. And it's like, guys, there's maybe like 2,000 people that do that. whereas you people regularly assume that because my wife is brown, she has characteristics X, Y, and Z, and it's bullshit.
Well, not to mention, who was it? It was some Hollywood celebrity I remember who basically said, well, if we don't allow illegal immigration, then who's going to pick our fruit and who's going to, like, really? Is that all Hispanics come to do? I thought they were coming.
They grind our chickens too.
Yeah.
I actually found that out, that they're big into chicken.
Is that a euphemism?
Not a euphemism. Well, I don't know. We were talking about sex trafficking, so it could be. They kicked out a bunch of people. This is under the Obama administration, ironically enough. In the South, there was a chicken parts factory, I guess, where they make like chicken nuggets and chicken parts for fast food restaurants and shit like that. So they deported a shit ton of people. I think the number was like 500 jobs opened up. And originally it was posted as this, like, see, look, these immigrants are taking jobs that Americans don't want, because people were traveling from outside of the state to come into the factory and work these jobs. And then like 6 months later, people were quitting because they weren't getting paid well enough.
Well, and I've gotten kind of mixed information about whether, they always talk about, well, letting in too many illegal immigrants. I mean, because I have to think logically that it does drive wages down, because if you have people who are willing to work for, who are willing to work for nothing, then it makes sense. Again, this is the same argument that was made for the minimum wage, was the idea that, well, we make it to price people like that out of the market. But that's just it, is they kind of get around that, which is why I was thinking, why would you want illegal immigration to continue? Like, it's amazing to me that the left opposes secure borders and then wants to say that, well, Hispanics just want a better life. And it's like, okay, but if they want a better life, don't you think it would be better if they came legally? That way they're not subject to being exploited by anybody who wants to, make them work for pennies on the dollar. It's like this. But
it's their donors who are doing the exploiting, and then they get the kids to vote for them in 20 years. So
that's true. So I guess there's that.
Democrats have always been the party of slavery. That's never changed.
Well, that's true. Yeah, the slavery just changes forms.
There's plenty of Republicans that like their illegal slave labor too. So.
Well, yeah. And it's a sad thing, really, because it's such hypocrisy to me to say, on the one hand, focus on, oh, these people just want a better life, they're not drug cartel people. First of all, some of them are. We don't, as you said, we don't know which is which until we catch them. Again, the whole point is, the point of the border, like any sovereign nation, is for us to be aware of who's coming in and also who's going out. So basically, we want to be aware of these things, and people act like it's some terrible thing to want that. Yet it's funny, because if you watch like any number of movies, people who go to Europe and you get the person at the little booth that's like, what's your business here, or business or pleasure, that kind of thing, and people act like, oh, that's perfectly routine if it's like France, but God forbid we do that here.
So actually, Jojan, you bring up a good point, and X, if you want to chime in here. So I have heard from individuals on the left as well as some people on the right that it's impossible to fully secure the border. I don't know if I buy that.
It depends on how you define fully secure. People cross the Berlin Wall. It's possible to get across any barrier. The barrier between North and South Korea right now has machine guns and landmines, and people make that crossing occasionally. But just because we can't get to 100% doesn't mean we can't get to 99% effective.
Okay. Because my follow-up question with that would be then, all right, let's pick a number then. At what level of security do we need to have before we as a country, or before conservatives as a movement, or the right in general, can say, all right, the border is secure enough. Let's talk about what we can do for the people that are currently here illegally. As far as, I'm an advocate of, if you secure the border first, and you take care of jobs so that illegal immigrants can't work in this country, then I'm okay to an extent with saying, if you're here illegally and you haven't committed any other crime, the only crime you've committed is actually being in the country, then you can pay a fine, work some community service hours or both, and then on top of that, apply through the legal process, pay your fees, pay your dues, whatever it is you got to take care of, whatever the law says, and we'll let you stay here as a temporary resident. And then if you want to apply for citizenship or permanent residency later, like years later, you get to start over. Basically, you get to stay here. But what point would you say, okay, the border, what would border security need to look like before we can say that's even remotely reasonable?
Well, on a wall, there are areas that a wall would help. Urban areas, especially where you can cross the border and be mixed in amongst a bunch of other people in a matter of minutes, would benefit a lot from a wall. And they've seen it already in San Diego, where they've got some fencing already up. They've pushed it out further into the desert, or they have to try to make water crossings now. Or you have to penetrate the fence, which gives Border Patrol time to respond.
Right.
So in those areas, a wall makes sense. In open desert, in most of Arizona, there's no point in having a wall. You've got national park land, Indian reservation, BLM land, and bombing ranges for a lot of the border.
So I'm a big fan of just taking like B-52s and just like patrolling the border every few days. I mean, keep it random too. Like they wouldn't know what's coming.
We already train A-10 pilots at the Barry Goldwater bombing range. Let them run the border every few days.
Like, what's that sound? It's like, oh shit.
Just put up some signs in English and Spanish, maybe Arabic. Well, maybe not Arabic. You don't fuck those guys. And then, just on a random day in the week, just carpet bomb the border.
I'm sorry, I do find that amusing, but because honestly,
you've got a 40-mile walk to your first paved road on some of those areas of the border.
Right.
You don't need a fence. You just need a Predator drone in the air to say, "Hey, there's somebody walking here. Go get him."
Right.
just keep a drone in the air with a camera that says, "There they are. Go get them." And they finally get close to the road, and don't drive down and meet them. Let them walk. By the time they get up to the road, they'll be out of water. They'll be exhausted. And you just throw them right in the back of the truck. No fighting.
Well, and that's another thing. Do you think an increase in personnel would be helpful? Do you think there were enough people? I
think we are at our limit for quality Border Patrol agents without doing something to enhance the job conditions.
Okay.
I was there when they started expanding the Border Patrol under Bush. I was there, and we are scraping the bottom of the barrel now for people that should be in law enforcement. The number of corruption incidents have gone up. The agents are generally not as bright as they used to be. They've lowered standards both physically and mentally, I think, to about the limit. So you're not going to be able to expand very much further without lowering the quality to unacceptable.
I see.
So I want to know, because I remember you posted something on Twitter about Ellis Island, and you had I really liked it because it was a list of questions. It was things that will get you kicked out of the country if you answer the wrong way. Would making the border kind of like an extended Ellis Island? In other words, would creating some similar list where we say, okay, look, as long as you're not a terrorist, a criminal, a violent or political reactionary, as long as you're not diseased, or from a country where we're kind of not sure whether you're a roving lunatic or not, as long as you meet certain baseline criteria, and you pay a fee, we'll let you in through the proper channels. Would that make it easier for Border Patrol? So that way they don't have to, because it would funnel people that really we don't need to worry about, and that would let the Border Patrol kind of focus on the people they do need to worry about.
Except we already do that with a lot of places. I mean, we've got a lot of visa waiver countries where you can just show up at the United States with your passport, say, this is who I am, and I'm from a country that we have a deal with that says you don't need a visa, to come, for a few months and tourist or a little bit of business in the country.
Okay.
So we effectively already have that for a lot of places.
Right. Because we basically do that with people from other countries besides, because
and that's
Chile
what
is like that, for example. Like
and when they ask you business or pleasure, that's really what the question they're asking is: do you qualify for visa waiver?
Right. Well, I get my dad was a different case because I was right.
What am I supposed to say so I don't have to deal with those assholes at the TSA and Border Patrol?
Well,
the reason this issue becomes strictly a Hispanic issue, obviously, is because they kind of share a continent with us. They're right there, as opposed to because my dad is an immigrant. He's a naturalized citizen, but he's from East Africa, so it's a little different because people act like, well, you have to treat every immigrant the same. And it's like, okay, we kind of do, but at the same time, it's different because if you're not coming from Central South America or from Mexico, then basically it's pretty easy to know when you're getting here. It's not a border that needs securing, but so I think it's the process.
I think like 40% of the people who are here illegally never crossed a border illegally. They came in on a visa and overstayed.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yes and no. Securing the border is only part of it. We have to have better enforcement of visas, and we've already got a law in the books that says we're supposed to be tracking entry and exit. We're supposed to know when you leave, in addition to when you enter on a visa, and we're not doing that.
You know why?
I think because when they passed the law, they didn't ask anybody how hard that would be to do technically.
I guess nowadays it should be easier, but again, without a secure border, you have the same problem going out as in. So if you don't really have,
Well, except that we already do a pretty good job tracking student visas now, but that's because we can network with the schools and ICE and the school communicate, so we know if somebody drops out.
Right.
But that's it's harder to track the status on other people. Employment-based visas are easier than family-based because again, you got an employer you can go to and say, hey, is he still here?
Right.
Family can lie. I do want to sort of move the conversation a little bit just because it's almost 5:30 or 6:30 for you, so I know you're super busy. I want to get into you. So just to bring back your lawyer disclosure, because it's probably more people now. Not offering legal advice. If anyone needs legal advice, see an actual lawyer in your state. That's not X, so don't bug him. But so you are a lawyer. Your main job, besides for like lobbying Congress, you own your own firm, right? And you help legal immigrants, like people who come here to actually immigrate legally. Right.
Specifically, employers, investors, the skilled immigrants that we actually want here. And I might get thrown out of the alt-right for saying this, but there are people that we want here, and we want to bring them in as quickly and easily as possible, and we want to take their money.
Yes, I am so for that. Let's just take their money.
Anyone who wants to throw you out of a movement for wanting to take someone else's money is an idiot. So, but that's just
it's a movement doomed to fail anyway. So,
all right. Anyways, I guess before we can go into, you're specifically working with legal immigrants and what you think can change that, I do have a question here. Can you speak to the effectiveness of a wall versus life peopled patrols with supportive rules of engagement? For example, failure of the Great Wall of China to stop first-century Mongolians. Hold on.
Well, I think. Okay.
It made more sense when you wrote it, right?
Okay. Go ahead.
I think a wall, like I said, in certain areas, a wall would be very effective. A wall just gives you time, though. You have to have people to respond because no wall is insurmountable. If you're not willing to shoot them or blow them up with landmines, you have to have people there to to pick up the ones that climb over or drill under the wall, or cut through the wall, or go around the wall.
Right. Which
So-
makes
So it's not really like an either or thing. It's got kind of a false dichotomy, is what you're saying.
Right. And air assets, when I was in, were crucial. Our helicopters were great help. Drones have made great advances since then. I imagine drones would be very helpful. We were also starting to get things like ground search radar trucks, which were basically you park it on a hilltop and it would find anything that moves in an arc in front of you.
Oh, okay.
And
That's nice.
you could use both visual light and IR cameras then to see what it was.
Man, they get
Right.
all the cool
So-
toys.
I
They
know, right?
they got some cool toys.
I would love to have one of those. I don't know what I do
And-
with it. It's like a drone. I want one, but I don't know why.
So, I mean, but they put them on trucks because if you stick them in one spot, they become targets.
Right.
Makes sense.
Okay. So back to my original question, in terms of what are, I guess, difficulties that you see with legal immigration in comparison to like illegal immigration, because you're trying to help your clients and your clients' employees legally immigrate to the U.S. And I'm assuming that the issues that we currently have with illegal immigration only make things worse for you, not better.
They make things a lot worse. There's a pretty large backlog with USCIS when you're applying for a visa, and I've seen the pace that they work on interviews. It's not like these guys are taking long breaks or anything. Their days are packed solid with interviews.
Mhm.
So the visas that require interviews, and now we're going to be requiring interviews of classes of immigrants that did not previously require one. If you're adjusting into an employment-based green card, previously they would waive the interview for most of those people, and they've decided that we need to see everybody face to face because it's a much better way to detect fraud than taking your word for it on paper.
That
Which is great for security, but again, lousy for backlogs because now we've added time and expense. Somebody that previously didn't have to go into USCIS for an interview now has to go in, usually with their attorney present. Answer the questions, while looking these agents in the eye or officers in the eye, and just under oath answer the questions that they have for them.
Right. So, I mean, I can see anytime you require an in-person thing versus a not in-person thing, that's going to add, I mean, in terms of looking at a paper application versus talking to a person, looking at a paper application can take you like, what, half an hour or an hour, and then talking to a person ultimately takes 3 hours, and then you have to like assess your conversation. You can't assess on hand.
Well,
Sorry, I'm getting.
Fortunately, I think the immigration interviews are actually fairly well paced. I haven't usually had anything go beyond much more than an hour.
Okay.
But but again, the problem is you're doing that multiplied by hundreds of thousands of people. So it adds to the backlog.
Do you have any ways of maybe, like, any ideas of how things can be streamlined or made better?
Unfortunately, at that stage, probably not, because there is a huge security benefit to having people there in person. I understand that part. But I think earlier in the application process, what you've got a lot of is there are a lot of family-based applicants that I don't think necessarily are nearly as beneficial. We've made family reunification a highlight of our immigration policy, and I'm not so certain that that's the direction we should be going. I think, and the most recent proposal in front of Congress to change our immigration system, the one, what are they calling that? I can't for the life of me remember what they're calling it. But but there is an immigration reform proposal in front of Congress to go to a merit-based point system.
Oh, okay.
How would that work?
That's the one that Stephen Miller wrote, right?
Stephen Miller had a big hand in that. I think the folks over at FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, had a big hand in that one also.
How's that supposed to work exactly?
From what I've read of it, it's a point system where all of the visas would be allocated based on points that you would get for you get points for your English language knowledge, you would get points for your employment. So highly skilled, highly compensated employees would have extra points. You would get points for US-based education as opposed to overseas education, and level of education attainment. So, but they also separated it out. So a STEM PhD would be more valuable than a humanities, for example. I'm not even sure they were giving points beyond a bachelor's to humanities.
Okay, that's actually similar to one of the points that I drafted it in my immigration plan. I didn't do a point system. I actually kind of like that idea because you can always change what you give points to. The idea that I had was if you people pay up front, and that helps pay kind of for their background checks, and then we make sure they're not terrorists, or communists, or other people that we should throw out of helicopters. And
we should point out, USCIS does currently run off fees. It's a fee-based organization. The immigration checks are all paid for by the people who are applying to come here.
Okay, and then what I would have them do is, okay, you pass, so now you get to pay another fee to stay for a few years, but we'll go ahead and waive those fees if you are somebody we want in the country, like STEM. So we'll say, okay, look, you can come to the country, you can stay here temporarily, and as long as you don't leave the country for a certain amount of time, then you don't have to pay the fees to stay here, because then we get the desirables that we want. But I do like the idea of that point-based system, because then you can kind of fine tune. Because the way I had written it was just like, okay, if they're STEM, they can stay for free, and if they're not STEM, fuck off. Okay, me. You don't need. I mean, we seriously don't need any more humanities degrees / baristas. Okay,
please let's.
Yes,
like
I would not. I would not only not credit that for permanent immigration, I wouldn't give you a student visa to study it.
I am on board with that. I was just like, like 60% of college grads in this country are some form of liberal arts or humanities.
Yeah, right.
It's just like, guys, we get it. It's an easy fucking test. Get another degree.
Or just learn something useful. It doesn't even have to be a degree. Just, but it's and I was going to say that I just thought of the idea that, if somebody says, well, I'm a student for this, and people try to get around the visa, because I don't know how that law works. I was going to say if they temporarily go to school, then drop out when they get here, once they're confirmed or whatever, but or change majors, which would be worse, I guess, because if it's, we'll let you in on STEM, and then it's later they're like, I'm going to change majors to I don't know, feminist studies or something, and then it's like, okay, well, hold on a second, you got in on a STEM one, and now you're changing, so
right.
I don't know what you would do with that.
I've got the name of that bill. It's the RAISE Act. It's Senate Bill 354. If anybody's interested.
Yeah, I remember that one. Okay, yeah, they I forget who it was I heard talking about that. I want to say it was Paul Ryan, but
raise as in raise or raise as in utterly destroy?
With an S, unfortunately.
I was going to say or raise.
Not that much fun.
Raised light, but whatever.
I've seen some criticisms on that bill. One person was saying that it didn't really have enough political collateral to really go anywhere, I think, when it was first introduced. And then I don't know if you follow Comfortably Smug at all on
yes.
had a few concerns where he was saying that it limits the family immigration, but it doesn't really do anything to increase like the quota or numbers for the STEM-based immigration. Like really raise the numbers of it limits the family immigration, which I think we can all sort of agree, like if you're not really adding anything when you come here, like what's the point of you being here? But it didn't really raise the levels of like want here. So
it does need some tweaking, but I think it's a really good start.
Okay.
And the primary benefit is it completely kills off any family immigration except immediate family. So it's your spouse and your minor children, unmarried minor children. Apparently, I have to specify unmarried and minor both because in certain places that want to come here, they let their minors get married or force them to get married. Oh.
We'll encourage it.
So it limits the family immigration to spouses and unmarried minor children. It also ends the visa lottery, which is a terrible idea. But,
why would you say that?
We could just instead of throwing it to random chance, we could actually pick people we want to come here.
Okay, so you're saying the lottery is a bad idea, not ending.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with that. I was curious as why you thought ending the lottery was bad.
No, the lottery is a terrible idea.
I agree with that. Okay,
we should be handpicking people we want to come here.
It's like, congratulations, Mr. Terrorist, you won the lotto. Please leave your weapons of mass destruction at home.
Please. We won't check, but
Sir, what is this white powder in your suitcase? Oh, I had a powdered donut on the flight here. Okay, that's not anthrax. No, it's all good.
And now we're all on a watch list.
Hey, I was going to say that's what yeah, right.
I'm on all the other watch lists.
Talcum powder for my date with my goat.
Aren't we glad we didn't end up with no fly, no buy? Huh? I was going to say. No fly list would be a problem. I think we're all on it now. So.
We did say that this was the show that was going to send us to hell, right? I mean,
well, yeah.
There's a surprisingly few Holocaust jokes considering our guests today. So,
but I think we'd be comfortable there. Right? I think hell is where everybody goes that tells those jokes, right? So that means hell must be pretty funny. I mean,
I'll be at the Carlin show.
I would think at that point heaven is actually pretty boring if no one who tells offensive jokes goes there. I mean, wouldn't you rather go to hell? At least I have better senses of humor.
I'm pretty sure X is Catholic, so he can just pay a bunch of reparations and get into heaven.
Indulgences, dear. That's what they're called. Indulgences.
Hey, you pay a fine, you do some community service, and you're all set.
He's probably white, so he probably has to pay reparations anyway, right?
No, we don't know that for sure. There is a betting pool, and if you're watching the show and you want to comment on what you think Mr. X actually is, so, a bit of a funny story. So when John and
remember that this is distorted voice, though, so you're not hearing my actual voice.
Oh,
that's true. Then. I was kind of hoping you would come on with like a high pitched, like a racist chipmunk or something, because that would have been hilarious.
I don't know. Does it have that setting?
But so John and I know each other from years ago. Actually, it's kind of funny. It was an experiment that I did on Facebook with an anonymous account, right. Where what I did is I eliminated any identifiers as far as my race or my politics or my religion or anything like that, just to kind of see if you took away like the ability to attack you personally, would people debate you on merit? And what I thought was interesting is that conservatives that would often disagree with me, especially on topics of religion, would kind of force themselves to debate on merit, whereas liberals just assumed I was white and a dude. They'd just be like, well, so what are you, man? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you, like, because then I know how this will go. You're just going to ignore the argument, and you're going to start attacking me because I'm X, Y, and Z. So fuck you.
Of course,
no, man. No,
Of course.
you got to be white and a dude, because only a white dude would actually believe that shit. Like that.
Now, what's
Crazy.
funny, what's incredibly ironic, is that Mike and I heard exactly the same arguments, and I have every identifier. I have a picture of me, my name, and people still made the same assumption: is that you couldn't possibly believe certain things unless you're a white guy, and it's like,
The fake black
Oh.
man.
I'm like right here, the face is here, and they're like, no, you have to be white. Anyone can put a fake picture on an account. Yes.
For
They
the
can also-
record, we've actually figured out not only is X's voice distorted, but we played around with some of the contrast on John. He really is white. We just made him look black, which
Exactly.
I think that's digital blackface. I don't know. Like, is that really bad?
I think that's how that works. Well, that and then in the GIFs, because I use GIFs of black people, which I'm pretty sure is also digital blackface, right? I mean, isn't that how it works?
I think that makes you Japanese.
Okay.
Well,
so
that
they
too.
said, X, they said your accent rules out Maori, even distorted.
Oh, what great! I'm glad we ruled that out.
One
Oh.
race down, 999,000 left to go.
We'll figure it out eventually. This is like the game Stephen Crowder was playing with Roaming Millennial. Where they're like, what nationality did you see? I don't know who watches him regularly here, but
Oh,
Yeah.
that was Thursday, like 2 weeks ago or something. Yeah.
yeah, where they
The Disney.
that was hilarious. Yeah, where they kept doing the Disney princess thing, but they couldn't tell what she was. Like they do the songs, and then it'd be like, like they did the did the Aladdin ones. Like, I can show you the world, including your home nation of Korea.
We had a comment. We got a comment from Neil Dube in the chat, the live chat. So someone who definitely does not have a Twitter account and who has definitely never heard of X before right this minute. My money is still on Roof Korean. Which I will feel personally validated if it is Roof Korean. I think that will be awesome. And plus just the shit fit that the left would have. Because Asians with guns.
Oh yeah, we don't get too many of those apparently.
We need more.
More guns or more
More
Asians?
guns.
Or more Asians with guns?
All
Because that's my fetish.
All of the above. I'm so glad Camilla doesn't listen to this. Anyway,
Oh no, she's listening to it. She's commenting in the live chat too. I'm probably gonna
oh
get
god.
yeah. Whatever. It's no sex for a week. I can live with it.
Oh really? I'm
Hand.
gonna
Okay.
call bullshit on that. Okay, gotcha.
Bring it back now, because now that we've talked about is okay. Bringing it back. Let's talk DACA. You know enough to hate.
Well, the best and most important thing about DACA, it's dead.
Yeah, there we go.
They're not accepting any more DACA applications. If you don't have DACA status now, you never will. It's dead.
Which is good, because I was doubting him on that.
DACA for
I
anyone who
think of
doesn't
the
know,
children, X. Think of the
I am. I'm thinking of the children going back.
So a lot of those DACA recipients are older than me, because I think you had to be like 32 in 2012.
Okay, so think of the 32-year-old children.
About my age. Well, yeah, that. I'm not 32, not anymore.
You had to be under 31 on June 15th, 2012.
Right. But
So
what?
almost everyone on this call could technically, if we were illegal, could have basically everyone on this call, probably except for you, X, if I have any idea what your age is, which I don't, but I'm sure everyone on this call could technically qualify by that age limit.
I'm not making that one.
I don't think I would.
Wait, you said 31 as of July what?
2012.
Whoa, what's going on here?
Ooh, I don't know. But let's see. So July 2012.
June 15, 2012. You had to be 31 or younger.
Okay. No, I was under
31.
Yeah, I
So-
was. I was
2 years
28.
ago, I don't. Nope. I was 31 in June on that date.
Had to be before your 31st birthday.
2012.
I missed it by this much, because my birthday's in February. So now, fuck, I'm gonna get deported. God damn.
That's
Wait, I thought.
Jose is his situation. I don't know. You've seen that Twitter account, that really annoying guy, Jose is speaking, who is like
that guy.
Oh, that's the best reaction right there, folks.
It's like, oh, that guy.
That guy.
One of the most vocal illegals.
He's not only vocal about being illegal, he has admitted in writing to Social Security fraud and identity theft. He should be in the Philippines right now with a permanent bar on reentry. He should never again be allowed into the United States.
Let's just give him a helicopter ride.
Those are fun, I hear.
Right.
I'm okay with that. I mean,
he's admitted to making a false claim of United States citizenship to receive a benefit, which means that you can never again legally enter the United States.
So why haven't?
What if we just did what North Korea does? That's
torture for a while,
right?
send them back.
That's what that is, right?
Oh, you meant that.
Well, I mean, because let's face it, the left was defending Kim Jong-un like 3 weeks ago and comparing him to Trump and saying that between the two guys, the homicidal maniac with nuclear bombs who shoots people with anti-aircraft weapons
and
is somehow significantly and substantively a better human being than the guy with the bad comb over. Like okay, well, if he's better, let's start implementing some of his policies, starting with immigration, right? Yeah. One fuck up, and then that's all you get, and then it's a firing squad.
Well, I feel like we're trying to get on better terms with the Philippines. They like helicopters. We like helicopters. It's work here.
I like it. You got to build on common interest, and that's
there you go. You got to have a common base. That is the truth.
We return him to the Philippines and have a ceremonial drop, and then we leave the helicopter for the Philippines to use.
It's like
we don't really want a Black Hawk. You don't want a Black Hawk helicopters anyway. They're terrible. They fall apart.
Okay, just give them like a really long helicopter ride across the country as a tour.
Just loosen some of the bolts, is what you're saying, X. Just
or just fall out of the sky on their own. You can hasten it a little bit.
That or like neglect to remember to fill up the fuel tank all the way. I mean, there's lots of things that could happen.
I actually called him out because he said something about if people call out your whiteness, how that's toxic or something. Don't get offended because they're basically not wrong. If you're white, you're an evil person. And I was just like, if only there was a word for broad assumptions about people that were based on their race.
If only. We should come up with a word for that.
We should come up with, we should come up with a word, but I can't think of one at this moment.
Apparently that word doesn't apply if it's like systemic, which is a stupid thing that they made up.
Yeah, because you have to have power.
When I say systemic racism, I think of like some kind of chronic disease.
Right.
It's like it's there and it's just never going away.
Well, that is what they believe, which is ironic because on the one hand, they say certain people will never succeed if systemic racism doesn't go away. Then they say whites are inherently racist. So it's like, well, wait a second. If they're inherently racist and racism has to go away for people to thrive, doesn't that mean you're saying that they'll languish like forever? just curious, but I won't run down that road too far because I know we're off topic.
Okay, I do have a few questions for you, X, from BK, Bijin K. You follow her. You know who I'm talking about, right?
I'm pretty sure I do.
Okay, so she wants to know, what do you do on your weekends?
Really?
Wow. It's like, all right, so this has become the Love Connection show. Okay.
Hang on, let me put my wife on to answer this one.
Well, no,
self-doxed himself.
She's happily
what do you
with
do
another person. But she wants to know, what do you do on the weekends? So I guess that's one of the questions. She has like a few more too. So that was just the first one.
But that one's funny.
Right now I'm trying to get this book written.
Ooh, you have a book?
Oh yeah, I was actually
All right.
I was actually gonna let you plug that because that's supposed to come soon, like next year. You said, right?
I'm shooting for first quarter 2018. I probably won't hit it, but if I shoot for that, I won't miss second quarter.
Okay.
All right.
That's the way to set goals, right?
One of the things that I absolutely love about you is like you're such a badass, but you are going. It's a sci-fi book, and you're going to be sending 100 copies bound in pigskin to the 100 biggest mosques.
That's my promotional plan. I figured that'll get me in the newspaper.
Oh, it will. It will.
That's
The cheapest way I found to become internet famous.
Yep.
Can you do like a
Just
cover with just like Muhammad on it and see what kind of rise you get?
Or maybe just somebody like knocking down a minaret.
Yes. I was gonna say.
And this is why it's a dystopian book, right? That's.
Well, if Michael Knowles taught us anything, print trolling is quite a way to get famous. Yeah.
It's a great way to get famous. Just don't read what they say about you. Just count the number of lines.
What were the other questions? I'm curious now. This started off well.
So also she wanted to know, do you think that there are some states that put illegal immigrants on food stamps and welfare, even though Democrats say that this doesn't happen?
Oh, it absolutely happens. It absolutely happens.
Right. Okay. So it definitely does happen. Sure.
Absolutely. And what you have to look, they parse incredibly finely what they call welfare. And that's how they get away with this claim. So, oh no, they don't qualify for welfare. Well, no, but their kid's going to public school, receiving free lunch there, getting food stamps. You have to remember, if an illegal immigrant has a U.S. citizen kid, the kid qualifies for the benefits.
But as a minor,
That's
it would
true.
go to the guardian.
Yes. So they apply in their child's name for WIC, for free and reduced lunch, for temporary assistance for needy families, for all the other fun stuff. They go on Medicaid. And do people think that they get turned away from hospitals because they're not supposed to qualify for Medicaid? They go to the emergency room and the hospital files for Medicaid reimbursement in their name. And they just conveniently forget to ask their real name and get reimbursed anyway.
Right. Well, another
Hospitals got to get paid.
Michelle Obama, she did when she was first lady. One of her main initiatives was like school lunches and making sure kids get fed. So if you have a bunch of like illegal or U.S. citizens whose parents are not U.S. citizens in schools getting free lunches, I mean, that's technically, even if it's not technically a food stamp, it's us getting.
Well, it's even better than food stamps because we double pay. We give them the meal while they're at school, and then we don't reduce their food stamps for the meals they're getting at school. They're allowed to double count those benefits.
Right.
All right. And then she also wanted to know, do you think that a significant amount of illegal immigrants voted in the 2016 election?
I've seen statistics on this that I'm not sure how accurate they are.
Okay.
I can give you some anecdotal. I can give you something anecdotal for that. So my wife and I think this was her first election that she voted for someone since becoming a citizen. And so in Colorado, what they do is they mail you your ballot, and then you can fill it out, and then either mail it back in, or you can just drop it off, or you can go in and without the ballot and then fill out a new ballot and at the voting booth. So I was busy that day. I think I was working, and I seal my ballot, give it to my wife to say, hey, can you drop it off for me? And she gets in line, and she has to go to Boulder because we're in Boulder County. And she gets to the voting booth, the poll workers there, and she's like, hey, do you need any more ballots? And she's like, no, I'm just here to drop off my ballot. My husband, she's like, sure, you don't have any family members that maybe need a ballot? And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, look, I can give you like 5 or 6 ballots if you want to take them home and fill them out. And my wife told me this story, and I'm like, did you get her name? Please tell me you got her name.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's not funny, but it's funny also.
I would say that, conservatively, there's probably almost 30 million people here illegally. I would be surprised if at least 1 million of them didn't vote.
Right.
30 million is kind of high. Usually the
Like
numbers
12.
that I see are anywhere from 11 to 20. So you're saying it's even higher than 20.
They've been quoting that 11 to 15 million figure for 10 to 15 years now, and I have trouble believing it's not increasing.
Right. That is true.
That's a good point.
It's one of those things that's very difficult to survey, but just knowing what the rate of illegal immigration was and who was doing the enforcement for the last 8 years, I have trouble believing it hasn't increased drastically over the last 8 years.
Yeah.
I believe that was her, actually, her last question that she had is, how many people do you think are here illegally? 30 million would be a conservative estimate, which is a little bit scary to think it's like that many.
30 million, I think, it's not a conservative estimate, but it's a realistic one. It's a realistic higher estimate.
Well, especially given that if even 5% of them are voting,
Right.
that's 1.5 million people. I mean, that's a lot of that's a lot of.
I have a hard time believing it's that low. I mean, just from my wife's own experience, because they basically were assuming she was here illegally or that she had illegal immigrant relatives
family,
that would want to vote.
And we know a great deal of them that are here illegally have forged documents.
Right.
I don't think I'm breaking any new ground here by letting people know this, that a lot of people who come here illegally have forged identifications.
Right.
Oh no. We on my old account before I got new, I wrote about this experience. So my wife and I, when she was here on a student visa, and we were dating, and then we got married while I was in college, and we knew people. We knew people for whatever reason. They came on hard times, and the student visa kind of restricts your work access. Like you can't work off campus. It's really hard to do. You can't work.
And the school can put you on slave wages too, below minimum wage.
Right.
When you do work on campus, they can put you on like a $4 an hour wage.
Yep. And you can't work more than a certain number of hours. If you go 1 minute over, you can get deported. And so we knew people that, because of that hardship that those rules inflicted, they just said, "Fuck it, I'm going to break the rules." And you could go get a fake social security number for like $180, street corner. Like, and we'd have people tell us like, "Dude, you should totally do it. Like, I did that, and now I can start working, and I'm making decent money." And it's like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. One, it's against the law, and knowing my luck, I would be the guy that gets screwed while you guys get away with pockets full of cash. 2, I'd actually like to go into politics someday, and that's not going to look good. So no.
That's also true.
This was definitely an interesting conversation. I wish that we could go longer, because this is definitely more thoughts. What?
So you said you wish we could go. You wish we could go longer. And I said that's what she said, and then I was like, wait. She did not say that. I just realized that was an insult.
Okay, that's
more than for that self-burn.
Right. It's okay. All right. Anyway, X, we're definitely going to ask you back at some point. I hope you don't mind. This was a really good conversation. I think we learned a lot from having you.
It was fun.
It was, honestly.
Very, yes. You're a very good addition to the show. Maybe next time we'll talk a little bit more about helicopters, helicopter Twitter. I think that will make a lot of your fans happy.
And congratulations, Dee. I want to congratulate you on your birthday. Happy birthday. And 2, congratulations for not totally fangirling over X like you thought you were going to do.
A little bit.
I'm really proud of you.
A little bit. And yes, I'll say it in it's not my native language, but it's the one foreign language I know. O tanjoubi omedetou gozaimasu. So yeah, there we go.
I have no idea what
I
you
think
said.
that was Japanese.
It wasn't
I
Japanese.
know it's Japanese. I have no idea what the fuck you just said.
Happy birthday.
Oh.
Oh,
You're talking to D. Okay.
Yes, I was talking to D. Yes, I put it. I did post it on Facebook in Japanese too, so there was that. Anyway, so yes, Mr. X said I was Japanese. He's not entirely wrong, I suppose, in that I speak it.
everyone, if you liked our show, please watch, comment, watch link below. I'll try and see if I can post a link in the comments to the RAISE Act for Congress. You said it was Senate Bill 534?
I think so.
The
I
RAISE
put
Act.
it down, unfortunately. It's RAISE Act. It should be out on the internet at this point.
Okay,
I think
Perfect.
Tom Cotton's a co-sponsor, so you can probably find it on his page.
okay. And Cotton is okay in terms of like, I mean, it's probably good for, in terms of
It
actual
is
immigration.
SB 354 for the record, by the way.
354.
350.
No,
And Chuck Grassley, if you look at Chuck Grassley's immigration positions over the last 10 years or so, his staffers are running immigration now for the Trump administration. So
All right.
that's
So
Okay.
Trump's doing pretty good on delivering what he promised in the campaign then so far.
well, we finally have a USCIS director. It's October. Those are usually confirmed with a voice vote in February. But yeah, we finally got a director. We can thank the Republican senator from North Carolina for that hold, by the way. Backstabbing son of a bitch.
That's not like the GOP in a nutshell.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, because he put a hold on the USCIS director of a Republican president because he wanted additional temporary labor for H-1Bs. He wanted an increase in the H-1B cap so that he could get his cheap imported labor in North Carolina.
Isn't H-1B like basically indentured slavery?
That's how it's used.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
and
that's-
we'll probably have to schedule another time to talk about that. But that's yeah, H-1B is how it's intended versus how it's used. It's a giant shit show.
I believe it.
That will definitely be
We'll
asked you
definitely
back.
have to have you back on, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed having you. I hope we didn't scare you off or anything.
No,
Good for you.
and I promise if you have too many listeners, I'll indulge in a few more racist jokes next time. Scare someone more.
There we go.
I was kind of disappointed on that.
Yeah. Yeah, we
think-
gotta raise the bar on that.
Everyone, make sure you follow at Still Glomar on Twitter. He will hopefully not be axed for wrong speak in the next month or so. And you can find Cornery_engineer at KAMUIHIRYOKU. And I am
There you go.
_everyone too.
Now you
At least
have
until I
to
get my account back, which may or may not happen. So,
I live,
Hopefully.
I die, I live again.
I respawn.
All that drama is over, thank God. But please watch our video, share our show. If you guys have any questions, my DMs are still going to be open. I'll see if I can email them or get them over to X if his DMs are not open at that time. But and we will probably most likely be asking you back again.
I usually leave mine open. Stop sending me penis pictures.
It was one time, I swear to God. It was an accident. I just sent that to John, okay?
I shouldn't be laughing now.
John never complained. God.
Exactly. See, why would I? I mean, honestly.
That's why he's laughing, actually.
Oh, hey now. Hey now. That was literally below the belt. I mean, come on. Or in my case, below the knee. But, all right. Thanks for having us on the show, or thanks for coming on the show. Thanks, Dee, for driving today. Stay ornery, guys. And if you have any ideas for topics that you'd like us to cover, feel free to DM me, John, or Dee, whoever you can get a hold of. And thanks for watching. You guys have a great weekend.